Welcome everybody to my updated Planetside 2 base building tutorial video. Now this is going to be setting at the end of 2022. So if you've been playing the game for a while and you took a break and you're coming back, a lot of stuff is going to be either new or not working the way that you remember it to be. Or if you are watching this, I don't know for sure if it's going to be a couple weeks or a couple months or whatever it is in the future. I know that they are going to be changing some things. So stuff with the AI module or the flail might be a little bit outdated. But for the sake of what is going on right now in the game, this is what these things are covering. I'm making this video because I do a lot of base building myself. Anytime I stream with my squad, we are doing base building stuff, and a lot of times we see other people who are either kind of doing stuff to grief our base, or maybe they're just building their own base and they're just doing weird stuff, and it's just taken down really, really easily. So I'm making this in hopes that anybody that watches it will be able to learn a couple things, or maybe help them figure out how to build a base in a more proper way. Again, everything in here is just going to be what my opinion is on it and what works best for me. When it comes to stuff, so somebody might find that doing this is a little bit better. I'm not here to argue with people or to tell them that building their base, they're doing it the wrong way. This is just what I myself do and my squad, and we've been doing this for a long time, and we've had multiple engagements where we take on enemy bastions and are able to completely survive almost unscathed with them doing full bombardments on us. So again, this is what's worked for us. If you are interested in watching more about this stuff, or you are wanting to join a outfit that just does base building pretty much, anything like that, you can go ahead and down below there'll be a link to my Twitch channel where I go live multiple times a week, usually 4 to 5 times a week, and I usually end up playing Planetside 2 to 3 times a week on there for an extended period of time, usually up to 4 hours. So if any of that is interesting to you, go ahead and check down below. Otherwise, we'll get into the video here. So the first thing that I want to cover is why you should build a base. Now there are a multiple different reasons that you can build. Some people are as simple as I want to be able to build an orbital strike tower and just use the orbital strike tower. Okay, I mean that's fine. A lot of other ones are there are bases on the map that don't have any compound or any structures with it. There's usually a couple of them. I mean the most common one that I build at is I believe it's on Esamir Tap Way Station. Uh, you can go there. You can build a whole base around the control point, right? So there's a few different things like that. Building a base, the benefit of it is you can have extra spawn points for teammates. You can have vehicle terminals where allies are able to pull from the front line instead of having to go back to a base, unless it's something large like I think the only thing you can't pull is a Liberator, a Galaxy, and a main battle tank. Everything else you could pull from a player-made base. You can have a router to set up where you can spawn inside of an enemy base, so you can just have a better spawn point. You can set up turrets to be able to help with the front line. You can set up a glaive or a flail to destroy other bases or just bombard the front line. There's a lot of different reasons. If you're playing and you set up a proper base, you can actually just kind of cut off the enemy and make it so they cannot push. Because if you get a base built properly, the only way that they are going to get through it is 2 to 3 orbital strikes have to hit it, and they have to be all one after another so the players don't have time to rebuild. Or you could just, if it might take, a full platoon of, 20 to 30 tanks to come by in order to take it out. A lot of times, if you've played Planetside and somebody has a good player base up, you will either find a way to avoid it entirely, or you have to bring in a lot of people. You have to, if you're a leader of a squad, you have to go to command chat. You have to let them know that you need to bring in a team because you're just not getting through that base otherwise. So the importance of a base is if you know what you're doing and you have a good team of people with you, you are able to a lot of times turn the tide of a battle and maybe even win the alert because of it. So hopefully in this video you'll be able to learn a little bit more about that and be able to utilize that in the way that you see fit. Now that we've talked about why you should build a base, we need to go over a couple of the reasons why you shouldn't build a base. I do think that bases have a lot more benefits than fallbacks to them. However, there can be some issues that arise with base building, and I do want to cover those right now. So, the biggest and most important fallback is that the cost that it takes to actually build a base. So, I'll cover the more details of it in this segment afterwards, but it's very, very expensive to unlock everything in a base. Cordium wise, it's not too big of a deal because you're going to find cordium everywhere. But if you actually want to unlock everything where you can hold a base, it's going to be very, very expensive. The next thing that comes from it is if you are around an area where there is a front happening, if you build a base and you don't really know what you're doing, you're just putting stuff down just because you're like, why not? If there is somebody else building a base, you could mess with them a little bit because silos have to be a certain distance from each other. Artillery pieces have to be a certain distance from each other. And it's not the same as in like when you put down modules and turrets, right? Those ones have to be a few meters from each other. Orbital strike towers, flails, silos, they have to have a very, very large distance between them. So if you just put one like right in the middle of a field, then, people on either side of you might not be able to build. So if you're just putting down bases in just random spots, there's a possibility that you could be griefing a teammate. Now, if you think that you want to build a base, obviously go build one, but just make sure that if you are building a base, realize that nobody else is probably going to be able to build a full-fledged base there as well. So make sure that you are setting it up properly. On top of that, if you do actually set up a base and the base is doing somewhat well for itself, we've had multiple situations where I've had a squad of there's been 6 or 7 of us building, and we've set up a base and people have tried to push it. They've done it unsuccessful, for a half hour, maybe even up to an hour, and then all of a sudden they roll in with, 20 plus tanks, and now there's this huge front coming in that wasn't there before, but now we have to deal with because they were pissed off about our base. So you just have to pay attention to kind of what's going on around you and make sure that if you set up a base, obviously it takes a lot of time and effort to put into that base. So do your best to set it up properly and put it in a good location. So that way you can also use stuff such as mountains or whatever valleys maybe in order to help kind of utilize it a little bit and make sure that it's functioning kind of on its own in a sense. That's how you know if you have a good base. If your base can defend itself for at least a little bit, you have a really, really good base setup. Now, as I mentioned before, the cost of a base. Now, you can go in and you can see, I'm not going to go over every single number. You can go in though and see exactly how much every piece is going to cost to unlock. So, for example, it costs, I think it's like 2 or 2,500 certificates to unlock the orbital strike, and that's a one-time purchase. Then it'll cost 3,000 cordium in order for you every time that you put it down. I'm not going to go over all those numbers. You can see those in game. You can pull them all up right there and just be able to check, or you can look them up as well. The ones that we're going to look up are going to be the ones as overall. So, for example, if you are going to be building a base and you want to unlock everything, it is going to take about 20,000 cordium in your silo to pull everything out. So, a little bit less than half of what a silo can hold. Now, in order to unlock everything, though, your certificates or your certs, it is going to cost 26,000 certs to unlock everything. So it's very, very expensive. So if you are going to get into base building, you are not going to be able to build a full-fledged base, or even a smaller base until you unlock a few things. So you do have to dedicate a certain amount in there. So what I would recommend is finding somebody who does do base building, because there are a lot of people that do base building, but on each server there are only a few people who really do base building. On Emerald, if you're playing on New Conglomerate, you are going to see myself, you are going to see Tony Panda, you are going to see Cool Mando, you are going to see Zawa, you are going to see Spartan, just a few of us, right? Those are the guys that I normally interact with. Now there are other people as well, and some people will do bases, for this day, and then they won't touch it again for a week or whatever. But try to find somebody that has a base set up and kind of see how it operates and the purpose of it before you just go spend all your certs on it because you don't get those back and it's difficult to get those. One cert is 250 experience. So it's very, very difficult in order to get 26,000 certs. So it's an investment that you have to make sure that you are dedicated for. Now, other things that I want to cover is how long each thing will last. Now, a base, certain things will drain cordium over time. A pain spire will drain 1 cordium a second, and you have two of them. A routing spire will also drain 1 cordium a second. The orbital strike tower will drain 4 cordium. Each or the vehicle ammo dispenser will each drain half of one. The silo will drain two. The skywall shield will drain half of a cordium. Structure shield, each one will drain half of a cordium. Repair module, each will drain half, as well as the alarm module, the turret AI module, and the vehicle gate all drain half. So basically, if you have everything down, it will drain 16 cordium a second. So if you have all of those down and nobody else has built on the base, you have been the only one that has built. If you drain 16 cordium a second and you have your silo completely filled with 50,000, that base is going to last for just slightly over 52 minutes, and then after that is going to start to decay. Now, obviously, those numbers are going to change if people are pulling stuff from the vehicle terminals, from the air terminal, if people are building other things there, if there are other sky shields up or something like that. So in order to get a full-fledged base, you are basically going to have people there almost continuously running to get cordium. If you stop by any of the streams, you will see that myself and the others, when we're there, we will be fighting at the base, and as soon as the fight ends, we will quickly run, take our ants, and go pick up a bunch of cordium because the base is almost to the point where it's ran out and starting to decay. So it is something where if you are going to invest into it and you are going to continue with it, it is going to basically become your full-time job during that moment in time because it does take quite a bit. The first thing that we need to talk about when it comes to the building materials themselves is your silo. This is going to be the core of your base where you are going to be pulling everything from. As you can see, your turrets, your structures, your modules, whatever it might be. It's what's going to keep your modules operational, as well as different things like your turrets and your vehicle pads, and stop everything from decaying. Now, a silo can hold up to 50,000 cordium, which is quite a lot, but once you have a fully fledged base going and people pulling vehicles from it, it might not be as much as you think it is. So what you want to do with your silos, you want to put it in a very, very safe spot, usually behind multiple layers of walls and different ways to make it difficult for people to get access to it, because once your silo falls, you're not able to have your turrets automatically active anymore, your structure shields go down, everything starts decaying, you can't use your artillery, people can't spawn here, just everything shuts down. So the silo is your number one most important thing for any base. And the other thing that we have for our core here is the Elysium spawn tube, which as you see right here, teammates can use this as a main spawn point for spawning inside of your base. This is probably the next most important thing after your silo. In a lot of cases, I deem it more important, um, just because if I lose this, I'm not able to defend the base anymore, right? So if the silo dies, well, those of us that are still here can fight. But if this dies, then enemies know that it's time to push. They normally never target the silo first, they always go for the spawn tube. So put it in a good spot, make sure it's well defended. Teammates can spawn here. However, what you do have to keep in mind, if you leave to a region that's a couple regions away and go fight there and spawn over there, you will not be able to respawn on this. What you need to do is you need to come up here and angle at the top. It doesn't work for the bottom, so you have to angle towards the top and press E to bind to it. So whenever, if let's say here I was fighting on the map, it's late right now, so it's not unlocked. Let's say I was fighting over here at Gildad Cliffs, and then my alarm module went off, and I realized that they're fighting over here. I can redeploy back over here. However, if I'm not bound to my spawn tube here, I'm just kind of in a lot of trouble. I'm going to have to spawn to a base and then run over here. So if you build a base and you plan on leaving it for some reason, make sure to bind to this tube. And our first module that we have here in this section is going to be probably one of a lot of these modules are really important, but this one might take the cake. You have your Sky Shield module. What this does is any bombardment that comes from over top is going to be nullified by this up to a certain amount. If a bastion flies overhead and just starts doing an absolute bombardment on the base, this is going to go down pretty fast. However, outside of that, more often than not, you're going to have bases up more often than there's bastions, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But this is a really, really crucial thing to have, especially if you are building on the side of a mountain or something. People can't attack from above, which is ideally what they want to do. And one really, really nice thing about this is if there are infiltrators or light infantry trying to sneak up from your base on a mountainside, if that's where you're set up, when they fall through this guy's shield, it will completely destroy their shields. So if you have pain spires or anti-infantry mod turrets up, you're able to eliminate enemies real quickly. Or, of course, as well as if people try to Valkyrie or Galaxy drop on top of your base, they're going to be basically dropped down halfway as soon as they get there. Another module that we have here is the turret AI module. Now, this might be changing pretty soon here, but as of when this video is recorded, what the turret AI module does is any turrets that is in its range is going to cause it to, as you see, move on its own and automatically shoot at targets. Now, either they can shoot at a target because they're too close, or what can also happen is if they're being fired upon up to a certain distance, they will shoot back. So for example, a tank, passing by these trees right here, it'll shoot out automatically. But if the tank goes down to that tree way over there, it might not shoot at it unless the tank fires at this base first. However, the modules are going to supposedly be changing and make it so that way they are no longer AI controlled, unfortunately. But what it's going to do is when these turrets have people in them, they are going to be doing 40% more damage than they normally would. So you have your turret down, shooting with it, it's whatever, but if you have an AI module connecting to it, the turret is going to do 40% more damage with that way. So I think it's quite a big nerf, but we'll see what happens with it. Another module that we have here is the reconnaissance module. So what this thing does right here is any units within 50 meters of here will show up on your little map here that you have in the bottom left corner. When somebody comes close to it, if they're trying to hide behind the wall because they want to put down accordion bomb or something like that, you are able to spot them and yourself or teammates are able to go over there and hopefully deal with whoever it might be as fast as possible. As well as if it's not you that get the kill for it, it will give you an assist if a teammate kills them within this range. So this is a really, really good thing to have, and usually you want to position it somewhere where you feel like infiltrators will probably try to sneak in first, because one thing that a lot of people like to do is they like to get the accordion bombs, sneak up on modules as an infiltrator, put one down, and then leave right away. So this is a really, really good thing to have in order to try to prevent that. Now here we have our structure shield module, which is, as we saw already, as over here on the wall, gives a little shield right here for different structures, including the walls, the infantry tower, and the pillbox as well. And basically what this does is this allows it so that if I'm on the wall, I can shoot through here, and that works for enemies too, which you have to keep in mind. However, I cannot shoot through it from the outside. With that being said, though, you do have to keep in mind that if you are pressed right up against this shooting out, if there are tanks shooting at you, the damage is quite mitigated, but you still do take a little bit of damage. So essentially, a group of mag riders or prowlers or something could just all fire at the same time and still be able to kill you. The other thing about the structure shield module that not many people know about, and I see this all the time when fighting at bases, is you can overcharge these. So what you do is you press and hold E, or whatever your default, or whatever you have your key set to, and what it does is it overcharges structures. Now, it doesn't work on modules or turrets or anything, but as you can see, it works on structures. Now, what this does is I haven't been able to test it completely in the way, but it either completely mitigates the damage that they take or nullifies all damage to them by like 80 to 90%. I have been attacked by a bastion before and put up this and been able to withstand the attacks multiple times because of the structure shield module. So I'm going to go along the lines and say that it completely mitigates all damage, but they still might take a little bit of damage. Either or, if you're getting assaulted by a huge wave of infantry, planes, tanks, all the above, whatever it might be, One of the most important things to do is to activate this because the only person that can use this is whoever put this down. The final module that we have here is going to be your alarm module. Now, this one is not as important to have for a base. However, it can work in certain situations. What'll end up happening is if an enemy gets too close or starts attacking your base, a message will pop up to yourself and everybody in your squad saying that, for example, the player base in Veridad Pass is under attack. So, or movement is detected. It'll say both of those together. So what that means is it's pretty clear and cut thing. Either if somebody's attacking the base, you should know, and if nobody's attacking the base, I always look overhead to see if there's any planes flying over top, or if there's an infiltrator somewhere in the base trying to do accordion bomb thing. So if you're just looking into getting into bases, this is probably the last module I would unlock because if you don't have a lot of stuff for your base, you don't want to leave it just to defend its own, especially if the AI modules change. But again, if you do end up leaving the base, this can be quite helpful. Now with our next categories, we're going to be looking at structures. And with our first structure here is we're going to have the blast walls. Now you get two of these and you can position these pretty close to other things and kind of clip them into walls a little bit. What I ideally use the blast walls for is if there is a part of the base that needs to be blocked off still from vehicles entering, I will use this. But ideally what I will use this for is to kind of put around my silo, as these can take a pretty heavy beating and are pretty small, so might as well use them to protect something as in comparison to the rampart walls, which are much larger in size and cover a bigger area. These are basically what I use as a kind of last line of defense thing to have up and just kind of hide behind, or again, like I said, just protect valuable parts of the base that need that little bit of extra protection. Another structure that we have here is going to be the ammo dispenser. Now, in my opinion, this one isn't as important because one, it doesn't resupply air units, and two, anytime I'm playing and I have my ant out, I always have my resupply station up on my ant, so having this is not as important, but still, if you are fighting on a really, really active front line, having an ant sit here stationary can easily be a target for a lot of people, so having this out there is a lot of help, especially too, normally these are going to be on the outside of bases, so people are going to see it and they're going to be like, whatever. However, if anybody comes by and they see an ant sitting there, they're definitely going to go target it and blow it up right away. So this is good in situational uses, but this is one of the things where I recommend not unlocking until towards very, very end of everything. Unlock pretty much everything else before. This is like a bottom 3, maybe bottom 5 item to unlock, in my opinion. This structure here that we have is one of the very, very few items that you have that you start with by default, and this is the bunker. Now you can come into the bunker, you have a couple different shooting spots here that you can shoot out of that will be affected by a structure shield. You have an equipment terminal over here that you can use to actually switch classes or just resupply. And you have this little area which is kind of like a small shooting floor that you can use up here in order to fire out whatever angle you need to. Now, I don't usually use these in bases just because they're kind of clunky. They're hard to get into certain spots. They take up a lot of space. The only time I'll really put up a bunker is if I have a wall that I feel like is going to be taking fire more than anything else. I'll try to position this directly in front of it so that way it'll take a couple shots. The downside to using these is a lot of times people will come in here with infiltrators or whatever it might be. They'll hack this and then just be able to use this against you, because what they'll do, they'll come crouch right here in the corner. They'll throw down bouncing betties or whatever it is that they need to, or claymores. They'll sit right here and wait for you to come in, and the whole time that they're in here, your infantry turrets that are affected by AI modules will just shoot this. So it's going to take a real long time before it blows up, so you don't have to worry about it too much, but it prevents your AI module infantry turret from shooting at anything else. So bunkers are, they give the enemy a lot of cover, they can be hacked into. It's just If you know how to use it properly, you can make it work. Otherwise, it could become a little bit of a burden for your base. Next structure that we can talk about is going to be your infantry tower. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty tall and pretty bulky unit that you can use that has multiple different levels for people to fire at from this level on the back side, and then as well as a full 360-degree room right here with as well access up to the top if you are light infantry. Now, these are usually purposed for the sense of as well again blocking off different entrances to different parts of the base. But when a full siege starts happening on your base, if you have this in a good spot, a lot of your infantry are going to come up here right away and start firing down rockets, as well as a lot of times what I will use up here for is it is a safe spot, so I will use to fire my targeting beacon for my uh, whether it's the orbital strike tower or more commonly the flail. And as well as what you can do is, I have it placed right now, kind of clipped into the ground. You can use this as a storage place for certain modules that will fit in here, such as a repair module. Alright, and similar to what we just saw as our infantry tower, we have the pillbox, which is a much smaller version of it. Not quite 360-degree angles that you are able to watch from. You still have roof access though. Again, these ones are a lot of times used to clip into different sides of mountains or whatever they are, just to kind of block off certain areas, as well as you are able to put down a lot of different modules in here. A lot of times if somebody's in a really flat area, they will clip this into the ground, and if you have been around bases a lot, you might not be too surprised when you come in here and you see that there's 4 or 5 different modules set up, and even the spawning or the spawn room that you can spawn from the Elysium tube. Another structure that we have here are the ramps, which as you can see here are kind of a longer ramp. I've got it pretty much on level with the ground, so this is there's not much underneath that you can't see. So this is pretty much what we're working with here. A lot of times you can use these for if you're building a base kind of in a valley and you have a structure wall up or something is the only way to get in. You can use these ramps for vehicles to get in and out. You can block very awkward angles, I guess, for certain bases. These clip really weirdly, so I really don't use these, to be honest. Um, I got them because I thought that they would be cool, and then when I put them down and realized what they were, I kind of regret it, and eventually I would have got them, but I bought these way too early on in comparison to when I should have, so these are, I mean, if you've got some buddies and you want to jump around on harassers, sure, but for the purpose of a base, in my opinion, they're just not really worth it unless you have everything else unlocked and you just want to block some weird things. The only actual purpose that I found for these is when I use the vehicle gates over there. Sometimes the bottom bar clips a little bit weird and vehicles struggle to get in and out, so I'll put one of these on each side. But again, they have to have so much space in order for them to work that it's normally never in that situation. So it's a cool idea, it's a fun idea, but for the purpose of a base, it's going to have to be a no. Alright, one of your most important structures that you are going to be using is going to be the rampart wall. Now this is going to be used as protection to cover pretty much everything inside of your base, as well as it has little peeking holes here that infantry can shoot out of. You have little stairs here so that way people can get up and properly use it, and then if you're trying to repair it, you can obviously repair it from this angle here. Kind of mess around with it a little bit. You should have pretty good range of it entirely. But again, this is basically what is going to be put down for both beginners and advanced players for building. This is just kind of the bread and butter of when it comes to defending everything inside of your base. Over here, we've got the Sunder Garage, which is one of the bigger structures alongside with the infantry tower. Now, as you see here, you've got 2 holes up in the top and 2 big doorways. The name suggests it's a Sunder Garage. Oh, I guess I got somebody trying to mess with my base a little bit. Good thing I got my turret up. As the name suggests, Sunder Garage, you can pull a Sunderer in here and deploy it and have more than enough room for infantry to be in here as well, putting down turrets or hardline shields or whatever it might be in here, as well as you have like these 2 holes in the roof where if you have light infantry, they can once again jump up there even with the structure shield going. So the Sunder Garage is a really bulky item that clips into the ground decently well, not into mountains and stuff like that all that well. But this is another one of those items where I recommend, not that it's bad, but because of the size of it, I would recommend getting other things unlocked first. But once you get to the point of having a Sunder garage, it's just going to be really nice because again, it's just this wide open area that you can put a Sunder in, or if you have vehicles like an ant, you can put it in here, or if you've got teammates, bringing in vehicles, they can use this as a little driveway to go from side of the base to another, kind of using it as almost like a vehicle gate as well. Right here we have another one of the structures known as the vehicle gate, which is, for me personally, one of my more favorite ones to have. These can clip into the wall and the ground a lot more than any of the other structures can, covering a wide range of things as well as giving you access in and out of the base, both on foot and with vehicles. It does stop enemy vehicles, however, from coming in, but infantry still are able to. The only real downside to these is once these shield walls right here take enough of a beating that I'm running through, it does take them down for a little bit and vehicles are able to come through, kind of similar to how like the sky shield is. Once it takes enough damage, it'll go down temporarily. However, you're not often going to see people taking these down with vehicles and rushing in a tank unless there's a couple tanks and it's only like one or two people defending the base and mostly everything else is destroyed. Normally people are going to attack from afar. This is more or less just giving you somewhere to run your vehicle into and have a little bit of safety behind you. Now you get two of these, and I recommend whenever you use these to use them for basically a front entrance and a back entrance, or having a double layer front entrance, just to kind of make it so that way you're not putting it in just random spots where infantry can come in and making it really difficult, and you're just kind of utilizing it for what it's used for. The other thing about this is, now I've got this clipped into the ground. However, if you have this where you're on flat ground and you have it to what looks to be the quote unquote proper way to put it, you are able to put a module underneath here. So a lot of times I use a repair module or a structure shield module, because again, the structure shield module, it will work on these as well to keep them amplified and fortified for a little bit longer. And now we have our last piece here is we have our vehicle spawner for our air terminal. Now, what you can use this for, as I already showed real quickly, you can use it to pull Reavers, or you can use it to pull Valkyries, and it costs Cordium instead of your certs, and the Cordium is pulled directly from your silo. Now, you have this little spot right here as well that you can put other, whether it's, a repair module or whatever you want to, but you can put some stuff in there. Now, in my opinion, I highly recommend to not place these or purchase these until a little bit later in the stage. Uh, Allies can pull from here regardless of how much cordium is in the base. So if you pull these out, an air terminal is a little bit different because not many people know how to fly, and they of course realize that, so they don't pull much from here. The vehicle terminal, however, though, as you can see, I don't have it put down because as soon as teammates find out that there is a vehicle terminal here, they are just going to constantly come back here and over and over and over and over and over and over again pull vehicles and just run it down basically. So again, I wouldn't put these down until you are sure that your base has enough cordium to be able to support a bunch of people coming over and doing random stuff with it. The plus side to the air terminal too is this is where you can use to supply air units, so with ammo. So it's not too bad of an item. I like driving the Valkyries a lot when I'm playing on with my squad, so it kind of works for me. Now onto our turrets here. The first thing that we have is the Spear Anti-Vehicle Tower. So basically your anti-tank. This thing is really, really good at killing tanks, lightnings, whether they're main battle tanks, whatever it might be. I'm pretty sure they one-shot any flash. They kill harassers in just a couple shots. Lightnings take maybe 3 or 4 shots, and then main battle tanks take, a 5 or 6 shots, whatever it might be. Now, they work the same as other ones, where, as you can see, they do start to heat up over a little bit of time, and, you just keep shooting, and eventually they heat up, and then when you stop shooting, it'll slowly go down, and then you could be able to fire again. So with these, obviously, don't let them overheat, because it takes longer for them to cool down then. Once you start to get into the red, just chill for a little bit and then go back to using it. You can use these if you are lucky enough with shots or maybe skillful enough with the shots. You can shoot infantry, and you will, if you land a direct hit, you will almost always kill infantry. I one-shot infantry all the time with this. If there is a heavy infantry with their overshield, I'm sure you probably won't one-shot them. I'm not too sure. That's something that you can test for yourself if you would like. But if you have no other turret up and you need some sort of firepower for infantry coming and you feel like this is the only way, this will be able to work in a pinch. I also did forget to mention that if you are in the console right here, you can see that there are two different vehicle turrets actually. Now with this one right here, you can see that it's a longer tower, and this one right here, it is set up on the base of the ground. I don't have this one unlocked just because I find this one to be in most situations useless. I would much rather have my turret be sitting behind a wall where it has some protection and shooting up over through the sky shield, whatever it might be, instead of it being ground level and in most situations having to be out in the open. So this is something that even when I get to search to and I have everything unlocked that I would want, I still might not unlock this just because I don't feel like there's enough situations that the smaller one is viable in. Now, with that being said, there are situations you can make it work, but for what I like to do, I don't find it to be too important. The other thing about it too is you can only have one of these vehicle turrets up at a time. Now, if you have this one and then you decide you want to place this one because you found a good spot for it, this one is going to despawn. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you were able to have both of them up at the same time, it is a clear cut, no questions asked. You buy it, you get it up there, you have a lot of firepower in your base. But because you can't do that, I just find the taller one to be far superior to that. So for that, I would highly recommend to go with this one over the shorter one in 99% of situations. Next turret that we have now is our Hoplon Anti-Aircraft Phalanx Tower, so anti-air tower. Now this does work pretty well against destroying pretty much any plane that's flying overhead. Again, it overheats the same as your other turrets, and depending on what the plane is, you might be able to take it out in one full barrage if they are somewhat close, but something like a Liberator or a Galaxy, it's going to take a little bit more. Now, again, in a pinch, you can use this against infantry, but if they're not really close, as you can see, the shots kind of spread out a little bit, so it might be a little bit difficult to kill infantry, and even if you know, just slow burst, they still kind of spread out a little bit, so it's not ideal for that. And again, for vehicles as well, tanks or something like that, you can use this if you need to. However, if you are a light infantry or heavy infantry, it is going to be much better to use that to fight tanks. Again, just use it what it's used for, right? If there are planes flying by, hop in this, and any plane that's coming by is going to be deterred real quick. And the last turret that we have here is the Xiphos anti-personnel turret, which is my personal favorite turret and one of my favorite structures overall. This thing will rip apart any infantry that come nearby. It shoots incredibly fast, doesn't charge up that fast to overheat, so you could take out infantry left and right with this thing. My favorite part about this as well is that if there is a plane or tank nearby, you can use this to fight, and in most cases you honestly will win the fight unless there are multiple of them. I have had an unbelievable amount of main battle tanks or even Valkyries or Reavers or whatever it might be come try to face off in a 1v1 with this when I don't have a repair terminal up or something, and I easily clean them up. This turret is very powerful. It does incredible damage, and again, even heavily armored targets just really struggle to fight against this. So my recommendation with this is to put this somewhere where it is going to be able to cover a large area of the base while also being protected. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll put this to cover over where the silo is, or if there's only like one way to enter my base for infantry, I will put this to watch it because whatever comes through is not going to be walking out after it gets done fighting this. And the final thing that I want to talk to you guys about for what it comes to with the base building is your field tool, your welding device. What the welding device does is it allows you to deconstruct stuff in order to either put something else there or move it to a different spot. So You just click and hold right click, depending on what it is how long it takes. Usually only takes like 2 to 3 seconds to get rid of something, and then it'll despawn it. Now, it does not give you back cordium, so you do have to make sure of that. And you can only take it down when it is finished building. If the item is still glowing kind of goldish color when it's, building up and getting full, you cannot take it down during that stage. You have to wait for it to fully finish. So this is here for mistakes, but honestly, what you want to do is you want to be able to make sure that you don't make any mistakes because it takes away a lot of time, it takes away resources, and it just can be an awkward situation because if you put down a vehicle turret down and then realize, oh, I've got it in the wrong spot, you take it down and then a couple tanks roll around the corner, you could be in a lot of trouble for your base. So this is the tool is to be forgiving, but when you take stuff down, it can be very unforgiving. So when you're building your base, take your time and make sure that you build it right.
Now, I just kind of want to go over a few different things for kind of giving you a little bit something to work with, give some tips basically on how you can build a base to kind of withstand decent assaults and just make it look cleaner and work more efficiently. The first thing is utilizing the Sunday garage to its fullest extent. Now, as I said in the video, you can use it. You can park a Sunday in there, you can park an ant in there, you can repair stuff. All those things you can do, but ultimately what you want to do is your Sunday garage should be used as basically a bunker. In clips in this video already, in pretty much every stream I do, and pretty much every base you see up, people put their spawn tube in there, they put the sky shield in there, they put a structure shield module in there, they get a repair module in there, you can get an alarm module in there, you can even get a pain spire in there if you build it properly. So basically what you want to do is you want to pump a lot of stuff in there because then the enemies have to get through your defenses, they have to get past the walls, and then they also have to get inside that Sunder garage in order to destroy it. Now, if you have a repair terminal in there and a structure shield module in there, it's going to be very, very hard to actually get in there. Basically, the only way to get in there is to rush in with infantry and try to break it. But if that's where everybody's spawning, it's going to be really hard. If you have a pain spire in there, it's going to make it even more difficult. And as well, if you can have an infantry turret watching it or something, or if you're an engineer, you just put your basic turret down. If you have infiltrators throw claymores or bouncing betties, whatever it might be, just pile stuff up in there and make it really, really condensed, and it will make it very difficult for enemies to be able to actually take out the core of the base. The next thing that you can do is it's not too incredibly game changing, but it does help if you are kind of in a hurry. When you're grabbing cordium with the ant, you can deploy it and pull the silo out. It takes up 2,000 cordium. That cordium stays in the silo, and then you can get back in the ant and grab another 2,000 cordium. Then drive to wherever you want to, put your silo down, and then have an extra 8,000 cordium if you haven't upgraded it. So instead of bringing 8,000 cordium to your base in the first trip, in that first trip, you brought 10,000. Now, I don't recommend doing this with everything because, if you're doing like a repair module or something, you're bringing an extra 300. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you can. But I recommend doing this with the silo. And then if you wanted to, you could do this with your orbital strike tower as well. But usually by the time I put up my orbital strike tower, I have enough cordium in the base, it doesn't matter. But I do quite often grab the silo from the ant and then get 2,000 more cordium because I like to build bases on the front line, so I need to have as much cordium to work with as possible. So that's just something that I like to do that might be able to help you in a tough situation. Another tip is the glaive. Now I mentioned that in order to get the glaive to stop shooting, you just have to, cancel it, shoot it somewhere else, whatever it might be. But what do you do in the instance of if the glaive is shooting at you? Now, what happens is when the glaive shoots, it is going to continuously fire. So if you are at a base and somebody is hitting you with the glaive and you look up at your sky shield, you're going to see that it's constantly being turned off. It's damaging all modules a little bit, and it just gets really, really frustrating. And you feel like the only thing that you can do is just you have to break into the base and break the glaive. But The glaive is only targeting because there is a little beacon. So inside of your base somewhere, a lot of times this is going to be on top of the sky shield. There's going to be a tiny green flashing light. Now this is going to look kind of similar to how those little darts do for infiltrators. If you destroy that, the glaive will stop shooting. So if you're getting hit by a glaive and you feel like it's not possible for you to go destroy the glaive, get a light infantry or something, jump on buildings, kind of check to see where this is. Um, the glaive shots kind of are a little sporadic, but you can look at where they're hitting and kind of get a general idea where this dot might be. It can be a little bit harder to see. I find that it's easier to spot at nighttime, just because in daytime, it's flashing and it's there's sun out. It's a little bit weird, but you still can spot it. So if that is something that you need to deal with, you just have to search around the base and find it. Now it's until you kind of start doing it quite often, it's going to be hard to spot right away. But once you start figuring out what you're looking for and you get more comfortable with it, it shouldn't be too much of an issue for you. Another thing is building near non-deployables, which basically means using different environmental things. So if you can build and you have a mountain blocking one side of you, or there is just already pre-made buildings somewhere, try to use that to cover one of your sides, maybe multiple sides, who knows, depending on where you're building, it can cover multiple things because what you'll notice when you're building bases is a lot of tanks will just sit really far back and slowly snipe away. And with the new main battle tanks being upgraded, these tank shots do crazy damage. So if you can have, let's say, a mountain blocking shots, you only have to worry about couple certain angles. You can put your repair modules, you can get them doubled up and hit a wall and make it so it's really, really easy to defend, but if you have to defend all four sides, northeast, south, and west, and they're all being attacked, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually be able to defend and repair or even retaliate. So trying to use the natural environment or pre-made buildings already as cover is going to do wonders for you. The last tip that I have is always try to build lower instead of higher. What I mean by this is you mostly see it on Hassan, where people will take their ant, they'll scale up to the top of the mountain there, and they'll build a base. Now, if you're just building a base because you want some spawn points and stuff like that, sure, that's fine. But you'll always see people are putting turrets up there, and the turrets can only aim so low. And I mean, obviously they can only aim so high as well. But I find it better to build at a lower elevation because if you build super high up, I can just sit down at the bottom of the mountain with my tank and shoot at you, and there's a possibility you can't shoot back. But if you build lower and I'm at a higher elevation with my tank, I'm going to hit that sky shield, and it's going to be very, very difficult for me to be able to snipe your base from afar. So obviously don't build all the way, down in some swamp where the base isn't going to be useful in any way, shape, or form. But if you build too high up, there's going to be less cover, it's going to be more noticeable, it's going to draw a lot more attention, it's going to be a lot harder to utilize the base. Whereas if you build deeper, then it's going to be harder to. The sky shield's going to give it away, obviously, but it's going to be harder to spot it. It's going to be. Usually, if you're building lower, you have more of that environmental cover with you as well, mountains or valleys or whatever it might be. So when it comes to that situation, building lower is just almost always better because the only thing that you'll really have to worry about is vehicles and your turret will be able to aim up high enough. If there are planes flying by, your AA can almost aim directly a straight line up sight. And your infantry, I mean, if people are jumping through the sky shield, then they're going to take a bunch of damage anyway, as we already talked about. And if there's only, one or two ways in, you can just have your infantry turret watching that. So, like I said, Hassan is the best example. People keep building up on top of mountains, and it is whenever I see somebody do that, I know that they are pretty new to base building, or maybe they just don't understand it fully. And myself, I'll usually just go take it out by myself. I won't even need to take a vehicle with me. I'll just be able to super easily go clear all the modules out and everything like that. So try to avoid building all the way up top because you are going to be a number one target for anybody around you. The last thing that I want to talk about here is something that I feel like I don't see. There are other videos out there that talk about, how to build a proper base and so on and so forth. But the thing that I don't see anywhere is the etiquette for it. And what I mean by that is how to work with your teammates. Everybody wants to build their own base. Everybody wants to have their own silo, have their own flail, have their own orbital strike, have their own spawn tube, everything like this. But obviously, these need to have distances from one another, so you have to build far away. So, the first thing that I want to state about this is if you don't have a lot of stuff unlocked, it might be beneficial to build with other players at first. Now, obviously, don't always do this, you can move on to your own eventually. But if you see somebody already has a base built up, it probably makes more sense to build with them and help amplify their base. Um, or in the sense of if all you have is your silo, your walls, and your anti-infantry turret, taking the base and building it somewhere, let's just say Nason's Defiance on uh, Hassan again, that if you just go and you build there, it kind of makes it awkward because now people might not be able to build there because you took up a huge area of it, and if you only have a couple things, then if you put stuff down weirdly and that stuff, it could affect other people. One example that I have of this recently is on Oshir. When bases are put up, there's always each team has one big base in the middle of Oshir. And if you play on the map, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we had an instance where somebody put down a silo, a spawn tube, and a routing spire, so that way they could have another spawn. And then they just left. They loaded it up fully with cordium and they left. They didn't have any walls, they didn't have any turrets, they didn't have anything. And they put it in such a good spot that they knew that the rest of the NC would have to defend it, but nobody could really do anything there with it because this guy put down all these things in weird spots. So we wanted to make a different base, but we needed to get rid of the silo. And so what ended up happening was this guy who saw that we were trying to build a different base, he just went into general chat and he was calling out like, "Oh hey, we're these guys are building over here. Come destroy this shitter base. Like fuck these guys. They're building a different base. Why can't they just use this one? Like these guys are shitters. They don't know how to build a base." He was just going off. I don't understand why he was so frustrated. There was like 20 of us actually, a bunch of people in my squad and the people who weren't in my squad. We were all asking him, "Just stop, dude. Just go. If you so frustrated, go build a base elsewhere. Go play on. I think it was Amherst that was open at the time. Go play in Amherst instead." Like I DM'd him multiple times and I even streamed it and I asked him very nicely to just stop. And then he just got pissed off and he was trying to team kill. He was trying to blow up our stuff. He was just trying to fuck stuff up. And so we team killed him, I think one time. So then, he went on a rampage and that stuff. Oh, I've got this recorded. You guys are getting banned, blah, blah, blah. Like the business etiquette was just like he ruined the whole fight for people just because he wanted to get the experience points for those respawns. So if you know that there are people building a base, don't try to grief them because it's just you're going to lose the fight. And that's what ultimately happened there because he just griefed it so much that so many people left. And building a base, it takes a lot of resources. It can turn the tide of a fight, but it's very, very time consuming. And when you have people on your team actively working against you and just working with the other team, I had multiple people on this stream in the course of just a couple minutes from Vanu DM me and they were like, "We're so sorry about this guy. Like, this guy does this shit all the time." And like, this guy's just known for doing stuff like this. And so you just don't become one of those people, right? Like, if you are bored, go do something else. Go play a different game, whatever it might be. But when you're just actively trying to ruin it for everybody else, like, it doesn't make sense. So if you're a base builder, you will find that all of the other base builders are going to work with you. They're going to be kind. They're going to be respectful. They're going to try to help you, right? So if that is the case, there's no sense in, returning that with disrespect and rudeness and so on and so forth. So if you are building a base, try to work with your teammates instead of against you, because that's the only way that it's going to work. If everybody's building their own tiny little base in just random spots wherever they can, the bases are going to fall very, very fast. But again, as I mentioned on my streams, if you've seen, we have had a base that was built by two people
withstand TR attacking us from the north and Vanu attacking us from the southeast, and we were only able to spawn in the base or every once in a while funnel in some tanks from the west. And that was not very often. It was people pulling lightnings from vehicle terminals. We never had any main battle tanks. So if you can build a proper base and work with your team, that base takes forever to go down. It took them like 2.5 hours before the base finally went down, and I think that's because a lot of people, the alert was almost over, and they were like, "All right, we need to go fight and secure other bases to make sure we win." So I honestly think that the base would have lasted longer, but that all that comes from just working with your team. So again, if it's in that situation, just don't be that guy. Work with your team instead of against them. It makes it a better experience for everybody. But that is all that I have for this video now. I know that there was a few things that I probably missed. I know there's some things that people probably disagree with, or maybe I worded it a little bit differently because of, any updates and that stuff that might come out in the future. If I did do anything wrong and I said something incorrectly, go ahead and feel free to comment down below and let me know. Again, a lot of this is opinion. I'm not saying that this is a fact. When it comes to base building, people have their different ways of doing it. They have different opinions and thoughts on it and that stuff. This is just what I have found to be all pretty much the only thing I do when I play Planetside is I build bases. And this is what I have found to be the most effective way to go about it. So again, it's just all my experience, my opinion. If you dislike it, that's fine. You go ahead, let me know why, because I might be able to utilize it myself and go with it from there. But again, that's kind of all I have. If you stayed here until this part, I appreciate you for watching the video. Hopefully, if you are new to base building or trying to learn something, you were able to learn something from this. And again, just so everybody knows, I play on Emerald. I play for New Conglomerate. I don't play daily. I'm usually on 2 to 3 times a week, usually a little bit later in the um, EST PM. If you guys ever see me around, feel free to message me. I'm always fine with having people join up and building bases and having fun. Like I said, there's a lot of people that when I get on and I start building bases, people ask to join and because they just have fun with it. We make it a lot of fun. So again, if that's something you're interested in, you can go down below. You'll find my Twitch channel. You can check out that there and then come join us up when we're doing stuff. But other than that, again, guys, I appreciate you for sticking around and watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video.